It's 8 o'clock. Good morning. This is Northern Light for Thursday, September 14th. I'm Todd Moe. Monica Sandreski is back on Monday. COVID cases are rising, and Governor Hochul is urging all of us older than 6 months to get the new COVID shot. The state health commissioner says the new shot is not a booster for previous vaccines, but a whole new vaccine.
People need to look in the mirror and say, how do I protect myself? That's what I'm hoping for. The virus changed. Now the vaccine has changed. And that's all we're doing here. We're just up to date now. The virus changed. Now the vaccine is up to date. So I'm encouraging people to get it.
This year, school meals will be free for students in much of the North Country because of a federal program. Last spring, school advocates made a big push to get free school meals added to the New York State budget.
Universal school meals did not get done in the state budget last year, but there was a significant push for it, and it almost made it through at the end of the day.
Also, Boonville artist Greg Fedchak describes some of his abstract paintings as painfully harsh. He says that's because there's more going on in abstract work than just spilled paint. More about his art coming up on Northern Light. Stay tuned. Broadcast of Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio is supported by Renew Architecture and Design, designing camps, custom homes, and more throughout NCPR's listening region. Details at renewarchitecture.com. And by Gray & Gray & Associates, CPAs, an accounting and financial services firm in northern New York with offices in Canton, Potsdam, and Spring Hill, Florida. GrayCPAS.com. This is Northern Light. I'm Todd Moe. With cases on the rise again, Governor Kathy Hochul yesterday resumed briefings on COVID-19. She recommends that everyone get the new vaccines, which are aimed at the newer version of the virus and will be available as early as this week. From Albany, Karen DeWitt has more.
Hochul says while everyone would like to see COVID in the rearview mirror, the disease is not done with us yet.
Everybody now knows somebody who had COVID recently. I think it was in the recesses of our minds for a long time because we weren't exposed to anyone who had it. My daughter had it last week. My son-in-law had it last week. My neighbor had it last week. People in work have had it. Many of my commissioners have had it. So the reality is setting in. So people are actually saying, oh, it's back.
The governor says data shows cases are ticking up and are now running at around 15 people for every 100,000. That's still far lower than the 50 per 100,000 just a year ago and the 300 cases per 100,000 at the end of 2021. But Hochul says it's hard to obtain accurate numbers because testing for COVID has largely become a private matter. People use at-home test kits and stay home for a few days until they feel better, but they don't normally notify their doctors or seek a test from a hospital or health clinic. COVID-related hospitalizations have been increasing since July. State health officials say 60% of all hospitalizations in some regions of the state are due to people having the illness. Hochul says the good news is that a new vaccine aimed at providing immunity to some of the newest variants of the virus will be available in New York as early as Friday. She urges everyone over the age of 6 months to get it.
Make this part of your routine health maintenance every fall because this is the new normal.
The shot is not a booster version of previous vaccines, but an entirely new vaccine. State Health Commissioner Dr. James McDonald says people should not become complacent if they've already had numerous shots. He says the older booster shots are no longer effective against the current versions of the virus.
People need to look in the mirror and say, how do I protect myself? That's what I'm hoping for. The virus changed. Now the vaccine has changed. And that's all we're doing here. We're just up to date now. The virus changed. Now the vaccine is up to date. So I'm encouraging people to get it.
And McDonald says a new variant known as BA.286, which is not a subvariant of Omicron, but a new genetic mutation of the virus, has so far not been detected in New York. Health officials say if you do come down with COVID, you should consider taking an antiviral medicine like Paxlovid that eases symptoms. Ann Hochul, saying it's not the bad old days, says there are currently no plans to close schools, require masks in public indoor spaces, or mandate vaccinations. In Albany, I'm Karen DeWitt.
Governor Hochul yesterday opened the door to a potential special session to deal with New York's migrant crisis. During a briefing in New York City, the governor said she's met with Senate and Assembly leaders about bills that would allow the state to issue temporary work permits to the tens of thousands of asylum seekers in the state. Hochul said they've discussed other ideas to ease the crisis, but no decision has been made yet.
We talked about if there were to be a session, what would be involved. And we're trying to game out and figure out, what is the objective of that.
Hochul, who's a Democrat, also criticized House Majority Republicans and Speaker Kevin McCarthy for what she says is a failure to act to create a functioning immigration system in the U.S.
Speaker McCarthy, other than wasting his time pursuing idiotic ideas like impeaching the president based on nothing, ought to bring back the Republicans, of which there are 9 from the state of New York, who should be feeling this and hearing about this instead of calling on us to do something.
The governor said immigration is a federal problem that calls for a federal solution. A majority of New Yorkers say migrants currently living in the state should be granted work authorization regardless of their current immigration status. That's one of the findings of a new Siena College poll. The poll also shows 60% of New York residents are in favor of a pathway to citizenship for all undocumented immigrants in the U.S. At the same time, Siena Research Institute Director Don Levy says many of those polled have serious concerns about the current influx of migrants.
So, for example, 42% of New Yorkers feel as though current migrants take more in resources than they return in economic activity or in taxes. 35% believe that migrants simply want free handouts, they don't want to work. 31% that they're dangerous, perhaps criminal.
Levy says these attitudes, which are more common among Republicans, are reflective of their fears over their jobs, tax dollars, and public safety.
They're afraid for their jobs. They're afraid for their tax dollars. They're afraid about the potential impact on criminal behavior that they think is very real.
11% of the New York residents who responded to the Siena poll said they were born in another country. This school year, meals will be free for students in much of the North Country because of a federal program, but not all districts will be able to offer universal free breakfast and lunch, and that means some students may fall through the cracks. Lucy Grindon reports.
Some students in New York qualify for free school meals automatically by meeting certain criteria, like being in the foster system, being unhoused, or receiving SNAP or Medicare. Under the federal Community Eligibility Provision Program, in any school district where 40% or more of students meet those criteria, all of the students in that district receive free meals. New York State committed to subsidizing the CEP program with $134 million in this year's budget. In the North Country, plenty of districts do hit that 40% threshold.
All students qualify for free meals, regardless of whether their families filled out the forms or not, and the schools in turn get funding for those free meals.
That's Tom Burns. He's the superintendent of BOCES in St. Lawrence County. Of the 18 districts he oversees, 12 qualify for CEP this year. But Burns says in the districts that don't qualify, including Lisbon, Harrisville, and Potsdam, some students who are eligible for free meals can get left behind because their families don't apply. He used to see that happen sometimes when he worked in the Parishville-Hopkinton School District.
For a variety of reasons, families then anyway did not always want to, fill out the form or turn the form in. And so we always suspected that the free and reduced price lunch numbers that we provided to the state were inaccurate and probably too low.
Meals were free for all students nationwide during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, but federal funding for that ended in the fall of 2022. This past spring, advocates made a big push to get free school meals for all added to the New York state budget. 9 other states have already made it happen, including 3 in the Northeast: Maine, Vermont, and Massachusetts. Burns says he's hopeful it may happen in New York when the next state budget is worked out.
Universal school meals did not get done in the state budget last year, but there was a significant push for it, and it almost made it through at the end of the day.
In the meantime, many low-income families will have to fill out free meal applications in school districts that don't qualify for CEP, like Canton, Colton, and Madrid. For a 4-person family, the family income cap for students to be eligible for free school meals is $39,000 a year. Lucy Grindon, North Country Public Radio.
You're listening to Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio. It's 11 minutes past 8. Good morning, I'm Todd Moe. Monica has the day off. She'll be back on Monday morning. Stay with us. Coming up in just a few minutes, we'll hear a Boonville artist explain abstract art. That conversation coming up in a few minutes on Northern Light. This is Potsdam cellist Beth Robinson. Northern Light is supported by AdirondackExplorer.com and AdirondackAlmanac.com, presenting daily updated news on public policy, environmental issues, and local communities in the Adirondack Park. And by Cronin's Golf Resort, offering golfers the opportunity to experience the fall foliage. Details at CroninsGolfResort.com. 2 Watertown residents who face possible prison time for their roles in the January 6th Capitol riot have had their sentencings postponed. 56-year-old Marianne Mooney Rondon and her son, 25-year-old Raphael Rondon, were scheduled to be sentenced 2 days ago. But according to a motion filed in federal court, Rondon requested a new lawyer, but had not been assigned one as of earlier this month. So the court decided to delay his and his mother's sentencings. New dates have not been set yet. Rondon has a video status conference tomorrow. He's also scheduled to surrender himself to the Federal Bureau of Prisons next week to start serving 14 months for a gun conviction. Prosecutors want him and Mooney Rondon each to serve about 4 years in prison for their involvement in the January 6th insurrection. Forest rangers in the North Country responded to multiple search and rescues and were on call for a major canoe race last week. Last Friday, a patient ran away from Adirondack Medical Center in Saranac Lake and swam across Lake Colby. A ranger took him into custody and turned him over to state police, who brought him back to the hospital. On Saturday, a ranger and the Keene Fire Department assisted a 19-year-old woman who'd fallen at Split Rock Falls in Elizabethtown. That evening, a hiker who was experiencing heat exhaustion on the Sleeping Beauty Mountain Trail in Washington County called for help. Rangers and local rescue crews carried her to an ambulance waiting at the trailhead. Throughout the weekend, rangers and environmental conservation officers provided a safety detail for the Adirondack Canoe Classic, known as the 90-miler. The 3-day race started in Old Forge and ended in Saranac Lake. One of the founders of historic Saranac Lake and the Adirondack Architectural Heritage Organization died earlier this month. Mary Hotelling was 80 years old. She was also involved in the Village Improvement Society, which plants flowers and maintains many of the parks around the village. Speaking with NCPR last year, Hotelling said, "The small size of Saranac Lake allows people to dream big."
If you've got an idea and you're willing to put your work behind it and do it for free, you can do it. You know, if you were in a city forget it. There would be just too many other people, too many reasons not to do it. But if you feel like being entrepreneurial about it, you can. And that makes it fun, actually.
Historic Saranac Lake is collecting donations in honor of Mary Hotelling, and the museum is hosting a celebration of her life later this month. An Akwesasne Mohawk and former Division I hockey player is the new head coach of the SUNY Potsdam women's ice hockey team. Olivia Cook graduated from Salmon River and went on to play 89 games as a forward for Cornell University. She later returned to Salmon River to coach girls ice hockey, guiding the team to the state finals in 2018. Cook was SUNY Potsdam's assistant coach last season. She's now the program's third head coach since it was restarted in 2007. Cook said in a statement that coaching at this level so close to home is, quote, such an honor and a dream come true, end quote. SUNY Potsdam opens at home against Castleton University on Saturday, October 28th. And officials in Upper Saranac Lake say a harmful algal bloom discovered there last week has now dissipated. According to the Adirondack Daily Enterprise, the cyanobacteria was first reported on September 4th and was officially declared dissipated on Tuesday. Brendan Wiltsey with the Paul Smiths College Adirondack Watershed Institute told the paper there were blooms in several of the region's lakes last week. He says they were all likely triggered by the unseasonably warm, sunny, and calm conditions. Residents are advised to avoid contact with water where there's a bloom present. Symptoms of exposure can include diarrhea, vomiting, or allergic reactions. Health officials say you should rinse yourself as soon as possible after exposure and seek medical attention if you develop symptoms. You're listening to Northern Light right here on North Country Public Radio. I'm Todd Moe. Monica is back Monday morning, and coming up in just a moment, we'll listen again to her conversation with Boonville artist Greg Fedchak. The Weather Service says a mix of sun and clouds today with the high around 70 this afternoon, light winds out of the southwest, sunshine in places like Chestertown and Lake George, Saratoga Springs, those areas, southern Adirondacks, and the capital region. Partly sunny skies elsewhere, and winds out of the southwest. It'll be a little chilly tonight. Lows dipping into the 30s in some of the higher elevations overnight tonight. 40s elsewhere. And then tomorrow, partly to mostly sunny. A high again, upper 60s, low 70s on Friday. Right now, cloudy, 53 degrees here in Canton. Boonville artist Greg Fedchak describes some of his abstract paintings as painfully harsh. To show the viewer there's more going on in abstract work than just spilled paint. His work is pretty harsh. His subject matter is often things he's frustrated with, talking heads on TV, accusations of fake news, or inundation with advertisements on our phones and the internet. Monica Sandreski called him up around 10 o'clock in the morning to talk about his process.
Today, this is my bedtime, actually. I sleep during the day and work at night.
Really?
Yes. Mm-hmm. I usually go to bed about 10 a.m.
Oh, well, thank you for being willing to talk with me right now as you're about to nod off.
Oh, it's not bad. It's like New Year's Eve, you know?
And so you do most of your painting at night then?
Yeah, a common time would be 3 a.m., 4 a.m., sometimes even 5 or 6 a.m.
There is something so special about working in the middle of the night, I think, too.
Yes.
Yeah, what is that like for you?
I've read often about jazz musicians who will do their best playing after the small club or the bar or wherever they are, the venue has closed for the night, And they'll often play beyond 2 or 3 a.m. with their friends just to jam. And that's when they claim they do some of their best work, is when nobody's listening and it's 3, 4, or 5 a.m. We also live in the country. We have state forest on 3 sides of us. And across the road is the Black River Environmental Improvement Association. So we're totally isolated out here. So not only is it quiet, it's deadly quiet. And it's great to work at 3 a.m. Yep.
And you often use natural materials. I'm thinking of your piece, Withdrawing Projections, where you used
Withdrawing projection is the one that has a lot of tannic acid in it from really strongly brewed tea. I will take, for that one, I don't know that I think I've used tea in a couple of others and it didn't turn out as well. But I would dump like 20, 40 tea bags into a hot Revere copper bottom pot and steep it until it's almost black. And then use that as my paint or my drip. And there might even be some tea leaves proper from bags that I broke open in that painting. And honest to God, you'd think it wouldn't be that simple, but a painting will look more organic if you use something like sand or soil or tea. I think some paintings have oregano. Some paintings have clover seed. Some paintings have grass seed. I was actually concerned that the ones with seed in them would attract rodents because we have plenty of them up here and down here in the wilderness. I think the tea in Withdrawing Projections helps give it one of the most organic looks of any of my paintings.
Yes, this one in particular does have a really sandy look to it, or almost looks like the surface of a planet with these grooves in the bottom right-hand corner that sort of have reds to them and lighter, almost sort of vein-like lines and almost cement and stony-like sort of look of the backdrop to it.
A lot of modern art and abstract art in particular seems to look like shots out of a telescope or of the planets or moons. I don't know why that is. It probably is because these are some of the most fantastic things you and I see on a daily basis.
Yeah, I do wonder why that is. I guess when I've had friends that paint abstractions, theirs maybe have turned out more floral, and that could also be from who they are.
Yeah. Mine tend to be, I think, fairly violent or vigorous looking.
Yes, I think so too.
And like they're worked really hard, and quite often I'll be exhausted after painting. I'll be surprised at how much physical work it is.
Yes, and the colors too, I mean, are often reds and blacks and grays and browns, and the strokes are not gentle.
Some of them are painfully harsh.
Yes. Can you share a bit more about that?
It's not done on purpose. That's just the way I paint. I think it allows the work to be stronger and more attention-getting and more vigorous simply because that's the way I apply the materials. I think it's easier for people to realize that there's more going on in an abstract painting than simply spilled paint.
Boonville artist Greg Fedchak. He spoke with Monica Sandreski. His work is for sale at the Remington Museum in Ogdensburg, with all proceeds going to the museum. Coming up on 25 minutes past 8. This is Jam Crackers.
I got plenty and nothing, that's enough for me. I got plenty and nothing, that's enough for me. 'Cause it's one thing in the world that is absolutely free. People say they call me, but I don't own a phone. People say they call me, but I don't own a phone.
I don't own a phone.
Sometimes I hear voices, but I live alone. Got an answering machine, but it doesn't like my questions. I've got an answering machine, but it doesn't like my questions.
Who are you?
I quit school when I was 10 just to teach myself a lesson. I got a clock in every room, but I never have a minute. I got a clock in every room, but I never have a minute. Got a pot to cook with, no chicken to put in it. I got paper by the ream, but no novel for the pages.
No.
I got paper by the ream, but no novel for the pages.
No words.
I can sing for my supper, but no one pays my wages.
Plenty and nothing, that's enough for me. I got plenty and nothing, that's enough for me. Absolutely free.
I got plenty and nothing, that's enough for me.
That's enough for me.
I got plenty and nothing, that's enough for me.
That's enough for me.
'Cause it's one thing in the world that is absolutely free.
Plenty of nothing. That's the trio Jam Crackers, Dan Berggren, Peggy Lynn, Dan Duggan, and you're invited to their concert tomorrow night, Friday night, 7 o'clock at the theater at the Vic in Paul Smith's. For more information and tickets, you can visit the website paulsmithsvic.org. That's Jam Crackers in concert tomorrow night, Friday night, starting at 7 o'clock at the theater at the Vic in Paul Smith's. Also, a couple of other reminders about events happening this weekend. At noon on Saturday, there'll be a public unveiling of a historic roadside marker to celebrate the recent naming of John Thomas Brook. The new name pays homage to the 19th century black settler John Thomas, who escaped enslavement in Maryland and established a successful farm near the small stream in Vermontville. And that event is noon on Saturday. Everyone's welcome. There'll be a number of speakers there as well. And preceding the event tonight, there's a free public lecture on the multicultural history of the Adirondacks. That's at 7 o'clock tonight in Freer Auditorium at Paul Smith's College. And that is open to everyone and is free. Also, coming up Friday night is the Sober Open-Minded Mic Night from 7 to 9 at Blue Seed Studios in Saranac Lake. The spotlight artist this month is Blessed Dirt, the acoustic folk duo. It's free. Donations accepted. That's Sober Open-Minded Mic Night, Blue Seed Studios in Saranac Lake, tomorrow night from 7 to 9. And that's Northern Light for this Thursday, September 14th. Thank you so much for listening. We're back to more Morning Edition in just a moment. I'm Todd Moe. Be well.